My name is Brooklyn. In what I saw, a billionaire walked into a restaurant with his friends. He was mocking a blind man, mimicking him. Everyone was laughing, but I couldn't laugh. I could only do one thing, and that was this. I'm Brooklyn. And honestly, I never thought my life would change on an ordinary Tuesday night in Manhattan. I've been working at this upscale restaurant for 3 years now. 3 years of pouring coffee, taking orders, and watching people's lives unfold at their tables while mine stayed exactly the same. The pay is decent, the tips are good, and the people here don't really care who I am or where I came from. They just care about their food arriving on time and their wine glass staying full. That's the kind of place this is. Elegant, cold, predictable. But that night was different. I remember walking into work around 5 o'clock. The sun was just starting to set over the Manhattan skyline, casting this golden light through the restaurant windows. The chef was already prepping in the back. The other servers were setting tables, and everything felt normal. I changed into my uniform, cream-colored dress, black apron, hair tied back neatly, and stepped out onto the floor. This was my sanctuary in a weird way. My job was to make people feel welcome, to anticipate their needs, to disappear into the background when I needed to. I was good at it. Maybe too good at it. Around 6:30, the restaurant started filling up. Couples on dates, business people closing deals, families celebrating birthdays. The usual crowd. I was handling a table near the window when I noticed someone different walking in. An elderly man with a white cane. He was moving slowly, carefully, feeling his way through the restaurant. He was blind. That was immediately obvious. He wore dark sunglasses even though it was evening, and his movements were deliberate, measured. He looked like he'd been navigating the world this way for a long time. I don't know why, but something about him caught my attention. Maybe it was the way he carried himself with dignity despite his condition. Or maybe it was the way nobody else seemed to notice him. People were too busy with their own worlds to see this man who was clearly trying to enjoy a simple dinner alone. I finished with my current table and walked over to him. "Welcome," I said, making sure my voice was warm and genuine. "I'm Brooklyn. Can I help you to a table?" He smiled. It was a kind smile, the kind that reaches your eyes. "Thank you," he said. "Yes, a table by the window would be nice. If it's not too much trouble." His voice was gentle, with this quiet strength behind it. I guided him carefully to a small table overlooking the street. I made sure to describe the layout to him, where his water glass was, where the menu would be, which direction the kitchen was. I explained everything clearly without being condescending. He appreciated that. I could tell by the way he nodded and thanked me again. "Are you from around here?" he asked as I set down his water glass. The question seemed simple, but there was something deeper in it, like he was really interested in knowing me, not just making conversation. "Born and raised," I said. "New York is home." He smiled again, that same kind smile. "There's something about this city," he said. "It teaches you things. Hard things, but important things." I didn't ask him what he meant. Something told me he had his own story, his own reasons for being here alone on a Tuesday night. We all do, don't we? I took his order. Something simple, pasta with light sauce, a glass of water, no dessert yet, and headed back to the kitchen. But I kept thinking about him. There was something familiar about him somehow, though I knew I'd never seen him before. Or maybe I had, in a dream or a past life or something equally impossible. I don't believe in fate or destiny, but I was starting to wonder if maybe I should. The restaurant was getting busier, more tables filled up, more noise, more energy. That's when they came in. I was carrying plates of food when I heard the laughter. Not the warm, genuine kind, the loud, obnoxious kind that makes you wince. I turned around and saw them. A group of 5 or 6 people, all dressed in expensive clothes, all radiating this arrogant confidence that comes from having too much money and too little empathy. They were loud from the moment they entered, snapping fingers at the host, making demands. At the center of the group was a man in his early 40s, tall, handsome, in that polished, artificial way that comes from expensive haircuts and personal trainers. He had the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes. This was a man used to getting what he wanted, and he expected the world to bend to his will. They were seated at a table not far from the window, where the elderly blind man was sitting peacefully with his pasta. And that's when it started. The billionaire, because that's what he was, I'd recognize that type anywhere, noticed the blind man. I watched his face change. It was like a switch flipped. His eyes got this cruel glint in them. He leaned over to his friends and said something. I couldn't hear it clearly, but I saw them all look at the blind man and start laughing. Real, mean-spirited laughter. The kind that cuts through a room. Then he stood up. He actually stood up at his table and made a show of walking around like he couldn't see, bumping into invisible walls, waving his arms around dramatically. Oh no, I can't see. I'm so lost, he announced in this mocking, exaggerated voice. His friends erupted in laughter. Some other diners looked uncomfortable, but nobody said anything. Nobody did anything. That's the thing about cruelty. It thrives in silence. I felt something happen inside me. It was like a door opening that I'd kept locked for a very long time. My hand started shaking. I was holding a tray, but I could barely feel it anymore. I looked at the blind man. He had stopped eating. He was sitting very still, and even though he couldn't see the mockery, he could hear it. He could feel it. His face had changed. The dignity he carried had dimmed just slightly, like someone had turned down the light inside him. I don't know what came over me. I really don't. I've worked in customer service for years. I've been trained to smile, to accept, to absorb other people's rudeness without reacting. But something in me just broke. Or maybe it fixed itself. Maybe I finally stopped pretending that this was okay. I set down my tray carefully on the nearest table. I walked across the dining room, and every step felt like it was happening in slow motion, but also in lightning speed. The billionaire was still performing, still mocking, his friends still laughing. He didn't even see me coming. Nobody did until my hand was already in motion. The sound of the slap echoed through the restaurant like a gunshot. I hit him across the face hard enough to turn his head, hard enough to make the laughter stop, hard enough to make everyone in the entire restaurant freeze and stare. The billionaire's hand went up to his cheek. His friends sat there with their mouths open. And me? I was standing there shaking, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might break through my ribs. That man, I said, my voice steady even though I was falling apart inside, did absolutely nothing to you. He came here for a peaceful dinner, and you decided to make him your entertainment. And I won't watch that. I won't be part of it. I won't serve you or smile at you or pretend that what you just did was acceptable. The billionaire stared at me. His hand was still on his cheek. His friends were looking at him to see how he'd react. Would he explode? Would he demand my firing? Would he make a scene that would get me thrown out of this restaurant forever? But instead of anger, his face did something unexpected. It changed. The cruelty drained out of it. His eyes got softer. And then, slowly, he smiled. But it wasn't the same smile. This one was different. It was genuine. It was the smile of someone who had just been given something he desperately needed, even if he didn't know he needed it. He stood up and turned to his friends. "Get out," he said quietly. They looked confused. "Excuse me," one of them said. "I said get out," he repeated, louder this time. "All of you. Go, now." They left, grumbling, confused about what just happened. And then he turned back to me. "I'm sorry," he said. And he meant it. I could see it in his eyes. I don't know why I did that. I mean, I do know, but I don't know why I thought it was okay. He looked down at his hands like they belonged to someone else. "I've been angry for a long time," he continued. "Not at him, at myself. And I take it out on other people because I'm a coward. Because it's easier to mock someone else's pain than to face my own. I didn't know what to say. I thought he was lying. I thought this was some manipulation tactic. But then I realized he wasn't talking to me for my benefit. He was talking because he needed to. He needed to admit what he was and what he'd become. The blind man had been listening to all of this. He stood up slowly from his table and walked over. He knew exactly where to go. He didn't hesitate. He came right to where the billionaire was standing, and he reached out his hand. The billionaire took it. "I know you," the blind man said. His voice was soft, but it carried weight. "I know who you are." "I've known for a long time." The billionaire's face went pale. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so sorry." The blind man didn't say anything. He just squeezed his hand once, firmly, and then let go. That's when I realized something. These two men knew each other. There was history here. Real, deep history that had nothing to do with this random encounter in a restaurant. The blind man turned to me. "What's your name?" he asked. "Brooklyn," I said. "That's beautiful," he replied. "Brooklyn, do you know what courage looks like? It looks like what you just did. It looks like standing up when you could stay silent. It looks like seeing someone's pain and deciding that it matters." We talked for another hour. The three of us, me, the blind man, and the billionaire. They ordered more food. We sat in a quiet corner of the restaurant, and they told me their story. It took time. It took trust. But slowly, the truth came out. The billionaire's name was Richard. 20 years ago, he was a different person. He was a young man with dreams, with kindness, with the ability to love. He had a father who was blind, a father he was ashamed of, a father he left behind when he went to make his fortune in the city. He told himself it was temporary. He'd come back. He'd bring his father to live with him in luxury. But time passed, and it was easier to not go back. Easier to pretend his past didn't exist. Easier to become someone new, someone successful, someone who didn't have the burden of a disabled parent to worry about. The blind man was his father. He'd never stopped being his son's father, even though his son had stopped being his son. He'd been blind for 30 years. He never complained. He built a quiet life, a simple life. And then, one day, he heard that his son was one of the richest men in the city, so he started coming to places where his son might be. He came to this restaurant week after week, sometimes seeing him, sometimes not. He was just trying to be close to the son he'd lost, and I had been part of bringing them back together. Or maybe I'd just been part of revealing what was already there, underneath the anger and the years and the distance. "Why did you stay away?" I asked Richard. He looked at his father. "Because I was ashamed," he said, "and because I thought I'd gone too far, that there was no coming back from what I'd done, that my father would hate me." "I could never hate you," his father said simply. "I was just waiting for you to find your way home." That night changed something in all of us. Richard left the restaurant with his father. He asked for his phone number. He asked if they could have dinner again, maybe in his home this time. His father said yes. And as I watched them leave together, with Richard's hand on his father's arm, guiding him gently, I realized something profound. We're all just trying to find our way home. To the people we love, to the people who love us, to the versions of ourselves that are honest and good and true. Sometimes it takes a slap across the face. Sometimes it takes a stranger stepping in. Sometimes it takes the sound of cruelty in a quiet room to make us hear how far we've come from ourselves. The restaurant went back to normal after that. People finished their dinners. The chef kept cooking. The other servers kept moving. But something had shifted. Something had changed. And I felt it in myself most of all. I quit that job a month later. Not because of what happened that night, but because I realized I was meant for something more. I was meant to be the kind of person who stands up. The kind of person who sees pain and acts. The kind of person who doesn't stay silent when silence is a choice. Richard hired me to work at his foundation. We help blind people transition into careers, into independence, into lives that are full and meaningful. His father is involved too. They have office hours together every Thursday. I've watched their relationship heal week by week, month by month. I've watched Richard become the man he was always supposed to be. And me? I'm still Brooklyn, still a woman from New York who works hard and believes that kindness matters. But I'm also someone who knows that sometimes the most important thing you can do is stand up. Sometimes you have to slap the world awake. Sometimes you have to remind people that the person across from you, the person they're mocking, is a human being with a heart and a history and a right to dignity. That Tuesday night in the restaurant, I thought I was just protecting someone. I thought I was stopping one moment of cruelty, but I was doing so much more than that. I was breaking a chain. I was healing a wound that had been open for 20 years. I was reminding all of us that it's never too late to come home. It's never too late to change. It's never too late to be the person you were meant to be. That's my story. That's how a slap became a bridge, and how one moment of courage changed everything. And if you're watching this, if this story found you, then maybe you needed to hear it. Maybe you needed to know that standing up matters, that your voice matters, that one person deciding to be brave can ripple out and change the entire world around them. Thank you for listening. Subscribe for more stories that remind us what it means to be human.